Welcome back. Senate Republicans are calling on the DOJ to appoint a special counsel to investigate former President Barack Obama over newly declassified information in the Russia collusion probe. Attorney General Pam Bondi takes the lead, forms a strike force to investigate this declassified Obama-era evidence after Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard reported that Obama should be criminally investigated. Joining me now is Arkansas Congressman, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee today. Mr. Chairman, good to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. Look, sure. Devin Nunes was the chairman of the committee back in the day when this probe started. Adam Schiff became the chairman of the committee after the Democrats won in the next election. And your thoughts on what they both saw? They were both saying completely opposite things about the Russia collusion probe. Your reaction? Yeah, and I was on the committee the entire time. So Devin Nunes launched the investigation. That was my sort of baptism by fire. Welcome to HIPSI. And so I got the chance to observe and the differences between Devin's perspective and Adam Schiff. So Devin was forthright in initiating this investigation. He didn't even lead the investigation. He put that under the direction of Representative Mike Conaway to lead the Russia hoax investigation. In contrast, Adam Schiff would pontificate in hearings. He would walk out of a hearing and go to a media gaggle, lie and leak in real time, and then go back and rejoin the hearing. This went on throughout my tenure when Adam Schiff was ranking member and chair. He is a prolific liar. He would do this in real time. He would leak information, and then he would say that he had information or Russian evidence of Russia collusion. He still has never presented any evidence to that effect. And our report reflects that. Yeah, and it's very dangerous because when you're on this incredible title of chairman of the Intelligence Committee, like you are obviously today, and like Adam Schiff was at that time, people believe that you may be seeing something that we're not seeing. So for him to go out on all these Sunday morning programs and these political shows and say there's collusion in plain sight, suggested that he saw something that we did not see. But what you're telling us, and what I was told at the time, is exactly what you just said, that he was in meetings, closed-door meetings with you and your colleagues. It was clear that during those meetings there was no evidence of any collusion. You didn't have any evidence because there was no evidence, because there was no collusion. And then he would walk out of that meeting, go right into a press gaggle and say there's collusion in plain sight. Yeah, you know what? There was collusion in plain sight. It was between the Democrats, the legacy media, and other players. And they were selling this bill of goods to the American people. And in fact, what they did was perpetrate the biggest political fraud in our history and have yet to correct the record. That's what this is about today, Maria. It's about correcting the record. And if you take all the names off of the play list here, Trump's name, and just say president. Take away President Obama's name and just say president. Take away, individuals like, Andy McCabe or Comey or Brennan or any of those, and just insert their titles. Nobody would put up with this. Yeah. But because of the individuals and the parties that they represent, then it's fair game to attack. And then when it's your person that's being attacked, all bets are off. And it's just unbelievable that the standards. I'm absolutely baffled that they can look at this information and distill this down to one thing. We're going to retreat back to our Democratic corner and protect all of our people. Hillary Clinton, for example, if you haven't seen page 17 on our report, you really need to drill down on page 17. Some of the information that was available on her, and you're going to say that there was Russian collusion and that Vladimir Putin had a clear choice, a clear preference for President Trump. If he did that information and damaged then a candidate, Clinton, but instead he expected a President Clinton. So he held all that negative information in abeyance because he, like everybody else in the United States, with the assistance of the legacy media, were expecting to see President Clinton. And that was painful to him on the other side of the election. Yeah. So he held on to it, which shows he did not have a preference for President Trump. Yeah, you saw everything because you were on the committee, the Intelligence Committee. So, Congressman, I remember that there was that meeting in the White House that President Obama led, and John Brennan was taking notes. At the time, we showed those handwritten notes on air. We had pictures of those handwritten notes. When John Brennan wrote down, the Russians are aware that Hillary Clinton has cooked up this story that Trump is colluding with Russia. And we had those notes. What else did you see at the time that was particularly damning that you believe implicates President Obama in all of this?
Well, into the United States and had the meeting, that in and of itself shows that he was in on it. I mean, he essentially authorized it. He can't escape any kind of culpability here because his watch. So he either needs to come forward and say, no, I was never present in that meeting. No, I never authorized any of that, and let his henchmen swing, or he needs to take his licks like a man would. And the fact of the matter, I don't expect either of those two things to happen. It's going to come out. We already know. The American people were subjected to a fraud that if it were anybody else but President Trump would be entirely unacceptable. Happened to, for example, to a President Biden or to a President Obama or to a President Clinton, the American people would have been outraged because it's an American president that it happened to. But because the media helps to malign President Trump, we're going to look the other way and say, no, this is all President Trump's fault, when the evidence clearly shows that it wasn't. And it's been that way. And we've known it for 8 years.
Yes,
the problem is we couldn't get the report out to the American people.
Right. Well, you were being stonewalled I was reporting every moment of it at the time. But you know what also is incredible to me is that the Democrats have completely put aside what they're supposed to be doing. And that is, really stewards of this economy and this country for the American people. At the time, while they were screaming Russia, 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 China was eating our lunch. And China was stealing intellectual property. And China was, violating visa rules and, capitalizing on getting people into this country from China to put on surveillance. What can you tell us about that? Because I think that, while Adam Schiff and all these other people were trying to attack their political enemy in Donald Trump, they were also ignoring serious implications for America by claiming Russia was the problem when, in fact, the much larger adversary was China at the time. They just blew that off.
That's a great point that you bring up, because we know that the Russians have been involved in election, malign influence since there's been a Soviet Union. They've been engaged in the United States, and that's a byproduct of our against us. They've been doing it for decades, and it's likely not going to change. And they find willing idiots like Adam Schiff to help them with that. Meantime, China comes in the back door because we're all paying attention to this shiny object that the Democrats are waving around, and that's allowing China to get a stronger foothold. And the other thing is that as a country, we have sort of ignored some of the most pressing issues in our own neighborhood, for example, the Western Hemisphere, and we have allowed the Chinese to gain a foothold here in our neighborhood. And we've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Not only does China present a threat where they are and in their region, but they are aggressive in our hemisphere, not only in the United States, but every country in our hemisphere. And it presents, I think, an existential challenge to the United States.
Yeah, of course. And Tom, we have more on that coming up, by the way. But let me switch gears, ask you about the DOJ now suing New York City and Mayor Eric Adams over the city's sanctuary policies. Attorney General New York City has released thousands of criminals on the streets to commit violent crimes against law-abiding citizens due to sanctuary city policies. If New York City won't stand up for the safety of its citizens, we will. It comes as the Department of Homeland Security reveals 2 illegal migrants are now facing federal charges for shooting an off-duty Customs and Border Patrol officer during an attempted robbery in New York City, Mr. Chairman. What can you tell us about this story?
Well, it's really sad that a once great city like New York City that is circling the drain because of sanctuary city policies and because of looks like a willingness to elect a communist as mayor. If this were some small town in, Kentucky or Arkansas or people it would have less impact. But New York City is not just the biggest city in the United States. It's almost like the financial capital. It is the financial capital of the world.
Yeah.
And this is going to have a huge impact if they can't start to enforce and obey the law themselves. So here's what's happening. The president is saying, look, if you're not going to enforce the law, we will, number one. Number two, if you're going to adopt these kinds of policies which go against federal law, then you can expect to have a commensurate cut in funding. that's going to have an impact as well. Doesn't necessarily mean that the federal money won't be there, but it was going to be redirected in ways that will help, first and foremost, protect the citizens of New York City and is suffering under this poor leadership.
All right, Mr. Chairman, it's great to appreciate your time and your work. Thank you, Rick Crawford.
You bet.
All right, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back.